Hiya, this is my driving debrief for my second lesson with Tony, which is my fourth lesson overall of the new batch. I had 2 times 2 hours with Sean, now had 2 times 2 hours with Tony. He's a lot better than Sean for kind of calmly explaining stuff. I'm not over by the window today because it's become a blazing hot day and I'm not going to sit in the window in the fiery sun toasting oven. So yeah, today I wanted to work on junctions and he did let me get to some junctions. I had a few moments of stalling and stuff with the clutch and a few meeting cars moments that were issues, but we went to housing estates where there were little cats running around and stuff. I think we encountered a couple of buses. There were 2 cats, I remember. One ran out from the car, but we were going a very low speed, so we wouldn't have hit it. But it just surprised me that it just bounded out across the road at a housing estate, which is where you'd expect them, and just zoomed across. We started in my village and did some start-stops, went up through the gears. I'm still not 100% sure on when to change gears up, like when it's appropriate to be at 4th gear rather than 3rd or whatever, because we're on country roads leading up to the Hellmouth town, and it was a speed limit of 60, but he had me doing it 30 miles an hour until we got nearer the town. Then he pushed me up to like 40 for a little bit, and then when we came back we did some 40 miles an hour. So we went up onto the Downs, Black Down area, and there was a meeting occasion there with another car where there was just a big ass car parking bay to our left, and he was like, pull over on your left before that car, and I didn't know he meant the bay. We ended up pulling into the bay. I think he brought me to a stop because I was thinking we'd pull up later than the bay. Went all the way up to the war memorial at the next village along. Actually did my first junction with Tony there, and then straight after that junction my regular bus just kind of just high speed bombed it down. I actually said to Tony before we met it that, like, this is my bus route, the bus bombs it down this road, it's really annoying how fast it goes. And we got to the corner, and right up there the bus was like right on us, and he had to take the wheel and steer us into a side thing because there was nowhere to go because the bus came up really fast. He was running the side road, and then we kept on going up the hill. I said there was a little farm there where there's normally loads of stuff happening on the road, so you should go slow through it. So I went slow through it. There was no chickens and cows and people that day, but there often is, and the bus comes through there fast. Did that in 1st gear, I think, 1st or 2nd. Went up to 2nd junction, right at the top near Brent Tor. Did that junction. That seemed okay, and then I seemed to be keeping position most of the time on the big long roads. Okay, I thought I would just fail at position there. I think that I lose my position at junctions, actually. I don't lose them so much on the big main roads, but it still felt weird going like 40 miles per hour when we got up to it. Like a big truck that filled most of the road was coming towards us. I think it was so wide that the tyres were over the centre line, so I'm like, oh god, I've got to squeeze through this goddamn gap, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. Got through that, but I'm still not. I'm more aware of the edges of this car than I was in Sean's car. So this is a Peugeot 208 new. The last one was a Ford Fiesta, slightly older, and in the Peugeot it's got tinier windows, like you're looking through little portholes, and when you try and look for your right blind spot, you've just got this big bar right there, and you have to kind of go like poke your eyes side to side through the bar, like if you're looking to the right at a T-junction. You have to like weave your head in and out of this bar to actually see up the road. Little portholes and stuff, but in this Peugeot, like, I judge the edges of the car on either side a lot easier. Still not getting at 100%. The little bauble in the centre of the dash that I'm using to mark the left-hand side of the road is very useful, but when we pulled into park, I was too far away from the edge of the road at first, so I needed to place the bauble like, I don't know, a centimetre or 2 perceptive wise past the line of how the road edge appears in the window. hard to explain without showing you. But there are other times, like when we got to the housing estate later, where I was meant to pull in by the side of the road and I did it a little too sharply, and because there was hard curbs there, I actually got to deal with hard curbs, which I like because they're solid things and there's no hazy vagueness about where they are, like the edge of a bit of grass that weaves in and out. It's like a solid thing, so you can perceive it better, which I like. So I almost touched the front wheels on that curb when I was coming in, so I need to steer away from those ones more, but inward on the grassy ones more, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so we're bombing it up past Brent Tor on this 60 mile per hour road. We were doing like around 40 at most, I think, which felt very fast for me. I'm not used to it. When I do dual carriageways, it will feel a hell of a lot faster, I'm sure. And motorways, God. I went past Herdwick, which used to be an old quarry, but now it's some house. I was thinking of doing a walk there, but then I realised everything around there is private. That's Kilworthy Hill. We must have passed the gliding centre, I didn't even realise. I guess one of the side roads there leads to the gliding centre normally. So we went into the Hellmouth town, Tavistock, and we mainly went around a place called, I think it's called Cortland's Estate, and then the road around the back of there that is like the Dentist Road. Not the Dentist Road, what's it called? The Cortland's Road, and then it was a circuit on the old Launceston Road, Glanville Road. Yeah, that was the circuit, basically. And Cortland's Road was where one black cat was milling around the side of the car. I was like, don't walk out somewhere where I can't see you. And then the old Launceston Roads, where just turning onto that is where the tortoiseshell and white cat just bolted across the road, but we were going at low speed. We were doing low speed junctions, and I was trying to work out what order you do things in and how to keep position. I keep forgetting you can drift forward on clutch raised. I keep forgetting that, and I keep trying to add accelerator a tiny bit at junctions, and he's like, come off the accelerator now. I'm like, oh, it's not going to go forward, is it? And then I feel it's starting to come to a halt, but then it is actually going forward. I did stall a few times going back in Brent Tor area. There was like a steep hill we had to stop on after the bus nearly collided with us. We had to go around the bus. Then we stopped on a steep hill, and moving off on that steep hill was a higher steep hill than the one I did in my village. So I stalled coming off the clutch because I didn't have enough gas, I think. Yeah, because it's a proper hill start, and I didn't have enough experience with the proper hill starts, so you need to get the gas higher and stuff, and I didn't come off the clutch smoothly, and I didn't have enough gas, I guess. So I think I stalled twice on that stretch trying to get up the hill. Other than that, it was going around the estate in Tavistock doing meeting situations, they call them, and Tony calls it a tunnel when you have like a narrow-ish 20 mile per hour to 30 mile per hour residential estate road. Parked cars on either side, or parked cars all the way down one side. He calls those tunnels. So I've got to remember that he calls them tunnels and he's not talking about a tunnel. And there was one point where a Mini was coming up to us, and I didn't perceive that the Mini had nowhere to go, so I was like just approaching it slowly, thinking it would go somewhere to pull out of the way of us. But then I realised the only way it could go to pull out of the way of us, I realised later, was on our side of the road. There were gaps, and it wouldn't pull out the way of us on our side of the road. That was for us to do. So Tony grabbed the wheel and did a manoeuvre. It's like a slow steep pull in between two cars, like you're parking, and then a steep pull out. And yeah, I didn't expect that I would have to do something like that. Like, it didn't seem possible. It seemed like a tight space for me to fit into, like I wouldn't be able to do it. He did that this time. There was another meeting on the corner, with like the north corner of the circuit, where we were coming up and a small grey hatchback was coming around the corner, and there was no space for both of us to pass, and I didn't know what to do. I was kind of keeping going at a slow speed, and he said later, no, you could have stopped there and let it by. So we kind of stopped. He kind of stopped us at that point, and this car went by. And I think it was because I was not taking the curve round the road close to the left curb as I went round, and I didn't realise I was not close enough to the curb. So again, I'm having trouble perceiving where the left of the car is. It seems really intricate, really incremental where the curb is. And there was another time where I was near a bush or something and he grabbed the steering wheel slightly to pull me away from the left side because I keep drifting. And I did do one junction turn where I drifted left as I changed gear. It seems like when I take my hand off, like this hand off the wheel and move it to the gear stick, this hand turns that way. That's a problem I have. I can't keep that firm while reaching away. Still having a bit of trouble remembering what gear I'm in. And not always look, because the rev counter is just a really odd semi-digital rev counter. It's not very pleasing or intuitive to look at. I don't always know what revs I'm on because it just looks like it's like really basic shapes. I don't know if there are even numbers on it. If they're like really simplified numbers, if they are, it just looks strange. Yeah, there was another meeting with a second bus. Well, we didn't actually get in the way, well, we kind of got in the way of the bus. This was on the south end of the circuit that we were doing, at the bottom of Cortland's estate. He meant to indicate left and go in this junction, and on this occasion a small bus was coming down the road, and so as I went into the junction, I went wide, Tony said, so I must have touched or crossed the white dotted line in the middle as I was coming in and the bus was coming down. So I think he added more steering for me, going tight to the left. And I think the problem with that is I should have steered earlier going into the junction. So I need to steer earlier going into junctions. He gave a bit of advice for turning right. At one point he had a little video game on his iPad that is like dragging the cars around with a little kind of, it was like a tablet and he had a pen and he's like dragging little animated cars around like he was playing a video game to show me junctions. It's like a really strange little game thing he had with interactive cars with drag handles and things. He gave me advice on turning right into junctions, which is different from turning left. I think there's more hazards turning right. He said you shouldn't be allowed to turn right at all at certain speeds. So a right turn at 40 miles an hour and above is just a bad turn to do, and you shouldn't do it unless there's like a little, not a central reservation, kind of a central reservation, kind of like dotted line with diagonal stripes around it. This little lane in the centre, which is for turning. They have those on like 40 mile per hour roads. And you get in that, sit in that, so the traffic can go by you on the left, so you can turn right, starting from a stop or from a lower speed. He says that's the only time when, on a 40 mile per hour road or something, turning right makes sense. Otherwise, that and higher, he thinks they should outlaw turning right because it's dangerous. So I didn't know that. But he said if you are doing a junction turn right at the lower speeds, like 40 and under, 30 mile per hour roads and stuff, then you can use the wing mirror to line up with the central line of the junction you're turning into before you start turning, and that will keep you on your side of the road when you get into the junction. So you kind of turn late when you're turning right into a junction, and to judge it, the wing mirror has to kind of line up with the centre lines, and then you do the thing. Full right hand lock on the wheel. But I must remember when I'm doing that to look ahead first, because that's where the traffic's coming from, isn't it? So not only am I indicating right and everything, I've got to look ahead. I think I forgot that today, but nothing came from ahead. That's why it wasn't an issue. So I need to remember that. Overall, the driving, holding the wheel felt quite tense. I couldn't find a way of holding the wheel loosely, and there's loads of buttons on the wheel which I hate, and a couple of times I pressed a button which turned off the digital display with the rev counter. I fucking hate that. That's even more reason for me to want to be in an analog dials car. Because with an analog dials for rev counter and speedo in front of you, you can't slip onto a button that turns it off. And then you have to use some kind of mouse wheel thing to scroll to bring the rev counter back up, and it took like over 4 seconds for it to come back. It's like, oh god, if I slip onto that while I'm driving and I need to see the rev counter, that's gonna fucking be awful, dude. I hate digital cars, I really do. Other than that, the Peugeot's quite nice to drive. Yeah, we did cockpit drills at the start of the drive. I'm never sure exactly where I'm meant to be. I think I need the seat as low as possible, as far back as possible, and then the steering wheel down just so I can see the bottom tip of the rev counter. I think that's the position for me. He says seat belts are the last bit of the cockpit drill, I forgot that. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened, but it was mainly doing junctions around that village. The town, rather, in the estates. And I need to do more of those. He says next time we'll try some mini roundabouts, which I guess is just another kind of junction, but before we do that I'd like to try and get better at junctions, which is what today I want to do. Oh yeah, I was saying the car, it feels tense. Like the position in the car, feeling kind of tense, holding the steering wheel. I can't find a way to loosen my holding of the steering wheel. Dealing with oncoming things up the road like pedestrians, well, cyclists and pedestrians. We had to overtake a cyclist at one point and I didn't know how to do it. It was on the 60-mile-per-hour road. He was like trying to encourage me to add more accelerator, which felt strange, and I couldn't work out what he wanted me to do with the steering at that point. I know we had to be a car's width away from the cyclist and go round, but I was like still on, is it safe to even begin an overtake? Isn't there something coming? Have we got enough time to complete this maneuver before something comes? Because there was a brow of a hill above that. And I just thought, like, I don't know if I can do that. So he helped me a bit on that. I need to get to a point where I feel comfortable with junctions and knowing when to be in what gear. And I still am not comfortable with that. And it feels kind of tense inside the car, hanging off the steering wheel again. Can't loosen up enough. Also, I'm looking on Google Street View, should I say, right now, and everything, like where I drove today, looks completely different from the position of a pedestrian or the position of a Google Street View camera compared to being in a car. I almost didn't recognize the route looking on Street View because it looks completely different. Something about being framed in a window like that just changes the look of everything, so you don't really recognize where you are. Because I think I've walked that estate before. It was in the other direction, mind you, but I didn't recognize it when I was in the car. I didn't recognize it was somewhere I'd been. It all looks like something new. Anyway, I have another driving lesson next Thursday, I believe, at 11 something. I need to get a text on when that is exactly. And yeah, he says I might be able to up the amount of driving lessons I have to 2 lessons of 2 hours in 1 week. Not straight away though, because he's got students doing things, but whenever there's a window in like a week or 2 on from this, I might be able to squeeze 2 lessons of 2 hours in each week, which is kind of what I'm aiming for. Get it more regular so I don't have such a gap between each lesson where I can forget things. Oh yeah, and I should mention, he also did his thing with his techno gizmos in the car where he's got his pad and he's like, I'm wirelessly connecting to the car. And he's got like 3 cameras in the car and he was filming the maneuvers I was doing, and then he brought up maneuvers I'd just done on his little pad and played them as a video back to me, and I could like scroll back and forth on the timeline. It's like, whoa, we've just been there. You had a camera filming me doing that, and now we're just rewinding what we did in real life. And then he also showed me a couple of clips from his other students where he'd encountered weird hazards. One was a T-junction where a guy was coming out of this junction planning to turn right. Well, this guy, in fact, Tony, and one of his students, and a horse box truck came round the corner coming into the same junction they were at, and like the entire side of the truck, which was like a metal door, had swung open with the horse box and was falling out onto the road, and apparently it smashed into the driver behind them at the junction and it almost clipped them. Another one was a car coming around a corner near a cemetery that I'd been at before, and their entire door of this red car had just swung wide open as it was driving at him. It's like, Jesus Christ, what crazy shit. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll give you a debrief after my next driving lesson. Catch you all later.